Hi, friends. Welcome back to Compassion Rocks. It's your host, LJ Malberg, coming to you with a new episode on unlocking the benefits of building community. I've got a story for you, perhaps one I don't think I've ever told before. It was 2008, and I was making a huge shift in my career from being self-employed and working as a boutique booking agent for many bands and a couple of dance companies, and moving into corporate, arriving at a place where I was ready to take on something new and to have an elevated income. And I was just getting started with my job in the East Coast sales management position for a ticketing company. And I was asked for my thoughts on a go-to-market strategy for the US for the ticketing company that I worked for. And so putting all my strategic skills together, I was really excited for the project, and I put everything into and condensed everything down into a one sheet. And I presented it to the EVP of the East Coast. And he was very impressed and asked me questions about it, some very engaging questions. And I was very proud and excited to share my thoughts. And I felt like I was beginning to feel part of a community at this company. You know, coming from being a creative entrepreneur for most of my earlier career years, it was a new thing to work in a big office with many people, a hierarchical structure. And I was just so excited that my thoughts and ideas were being well received. 2 weeks later, there was an email that went out from our EVP, the same EVP that I shared my document with. And he was sharing my exact document nationwide with everyone in the company. It was a lot of people on that email thread. And he took credit for my work. And there was a small mentioning at the end of the email that I helped collaborate on it. And my heart sunk. And it was in that moment I learned two things about myself. One, I learned my ideas and my strategies can be so valuable that the EVP of a major company can covet my work and take credit for it. So in that sense, I took it as a huge compliment. And the other thing that I learned, and I think the more important piece to this, which ties into building community, our episode today, is that I thought that I was going to be part of this community. And in fact, that wasn't the case. Not in that moment anyway. I found community at that company in other areas. But in that moment and in that sense, I learned that that was not community. And I had assumed otherwise. So in my own naivete, I learned from it, and I learned how to quickly figure out how to take credit for my work and advocate for myself. What a huge lesson. And in doing so, I modeled it to other folks at the company who then started doing it themselves. And we built community. So out of that experience, out of that not so great feeling experience, I learned so much. And out of that blossomed a genuine community and friendship with people that I am still in community with today. So that's kind of how I want to segue into today's episode. Because I think a lot of us might have some false pretenses about what community actually is. And that we show up where other people might be, thinking that just because we have a common passion, or that we all want to win, whatever that end goal is, a common goal that we're working towards, just because that is shared, doesn't always immediately equal community. And so I want to share some benefits, some key benefits of what building community and community actually is, especially if you are a creative or a creative entrepreneur. And with the help of a friend and also my other friend, ChatGPT, I came up with a long list here. And so I'll share a portion of this. Key benefits of community look like support and connection, which means a greater involvement in other people's lives and work. It means encouragement, right? So you're encouraging others to succeed, and they're doing the same for you. Collaboration, which means that there is an element of growth and learning through partnership in community with others. That we're not necessarily living in an echo chamber where everybody looks, thinks, sounds, and acts exactly the same. Learning and growth, well, I think that speaks for itself. But in community, we can be challenged to think differently because there's more than just us in the community. So being in community with others challenges us to grow. Cultural preservation, which means that when in community with others, we're passing down stories. We have an opportunity to mentor. There is tremendous value in preserving our own experiences through others. And I love being in community for this reason. Finally, I wanted to share, there's many more on the list, but for the purposes of today's episode, I wanted to share networking, which we talked a lot about in our last Compassion Rocks episode. And networking it's such a huge kind of amoebic type of experience. You get out of it what you put into it, and it can be networking can feel like you're not alone. You can walk next door and ask your neighbor for an egg, and they will be happy to share it with you. It could be networking in collaboration for a creative project. It could be networking to get a new position. It could be networking to create a new business or movement. There's so much creation that comes out of networking, in addition to just, what are you going to do for me? Hi, nice to meet you. What are you going to do for me? It's so much more dynamic. And for that reason, I find networking incredibly exciting. And if you want to learn a little bit about how to make networking work for you and a little, more actionable, please check out our previous podcast episode, because there's a few tips. There is a few tips in there for you that you can put into practice right now. There was another time when I was in community, and it was a real community. It was the first time I actually ever felt part of a community. And that was when I was changing high schools. So I went from a performing arts high school in my freshman year to my neighborhood school, my neighborhood public high school. Both were public high schools, but one had creative arts funding, which the rumor was that funding was going to be going away. And so I transferred to my local public school, and my mom thought it would be a really good idea to get involved with the summer program at this new school in order to get acquainted with some of my new classmates. And the summer program that I joined was a summer theater program. And as a dancer, I had done some musical theater, but I was never really part of a theater group, a formal theater group. And this particular high school was known for their theater department. And so I joined this group not really knowing anyone. And by the end of the summer, I was part of a real community of high schoolers who were, yes, we all had a passion for the performing arts, but we had a passion for each other. We became so close. And these are people that I hung out with throughout high school. It wasn't a large group of people, but there was some underlying values that we shared about what life meant for us, being young people in the 90s. And, what it meant to go through that school together, the trials, the tribulations. These are not people that I would necessarily, I think if I hadn't joined that summer program, I don't know that I would have, going into my sophomore year, just gone up to any one of them and singled them out and become friends with them. But because of that camp, I was part of something bigger than myself. And it was as much me giving my energy to them as it was learning how to receive energy from them. And it was really quite beautiful. Not to mention, we had a hell of a lot of fun together. And again, I'm still friends with several of them to this day. So I wanted to share that story in juxtaposition to the first story I shared, because again, I think it's interesting to analyze what community looks like in different situations, how it might blossom, how it might be a false alarm, and what we can do to be resilient and bounce back out of maybe some not so great experiences. I want to just share, just because you've had a crappy experience building community in one instance doesn't mean that that will continue. It could, quite the contrary, it could become something magnificent. So I want to share that, in 2024, at the time that I'm making this video, I feel like I've learned a lot about building community and the importance of the benefits of community, which, by the way, are not always or only self-serving. And that, just because you go to an office, just because you go take a yoga class, just because you belong to a Sangha or a meditation group, it does not necessarily mean that that's your community. And I don't think you have to force it. I think community is something that feels like something that you're naturally drawn to, and that the relationships that you build there are a little bit more effortless, right? If it's really, really hard to build relationships in community, maybe ask yourself, is this really community? It's okay if the answer is no. It's just information, and it helps you redirect your attention to areas and pathways where maybe community can be built in a real, authentic, genuine, and effortless way. So with that, I will leave you. I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope that gives you some really interesting insights into building community and the benefits of it. And I'll see you next time. Compassion rocks.